Hello and welcome to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. I have a Star Wars t-shirt on today and my Dr. No movie right next to me. And that's right, folks, we are now doing it. The James Bond Retrospective. We are going to be covering every movie from Dr. No all the way to No Time to Die. We're just doing the official um, we're just doing the official Eon production ones, with the exception of one, because it absolutely relates back to one of the movies that we will actually be talking about on this retrospective. In fact, recently, actually right before I left for Kansas back in December, as of filming this, that was December of 2024. This is 2025, February. Um, I was actually watching through all of these movies. I actually went back and watched the Daniel Craig's. Then I went and watched the Pierce Brosnans. Then I went back to From Russia with Love and watched all the way through View to a Kill, because I hadn't really sat down and watched through all of the movies. So it was good to actually sit back down and kind of go through a lot of the different films again. Now, Um, this is sort of an introduction. Um, this was sort of an introduction video um, to the James Bond retrospective, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I kind of wanted to highlight the some of the challenges that were being faced and some of the different things that were going on behind the scenes in a lot of this before this film even came out. Okay, because originally they were wanting to adapt Casino Royale, but Casino Royale got picked up by a couple of different companies, and one was a spoof. It was done by Climax. It was a show that was kind of known for doing spoofs and various other things of different properties. I mean, they didn't just do James Bond. They did a lot of things back in the day. Um, and that one starred David Niven, which was, spoiler alert, actually one of the actors that they wanted for James Bond in Doctor No. They looked at a lot of people for James Bond. That's another thing that we'll talk about, but we'll get to that as we get to that. Um, and so and then there was another TV, I think it was a TV movie that was made for Casino Royale. So those movies, and Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman did not want to be seen as trying to ride the coattails of other people. So they took the brand new book at the time, which was Dr. No. And they adapted that into a thing. And at the time, Thunderball was also brand new in the literary world, and so they decided to take that premise of Spectre and kind of work it into the plot of the original Doctor No. Now, in the book, Doctor No is just a crackpot who owns an island and tries to keep everybody off of it by killing them. Okay, and anybody that goes to the island ends up getting killed. And Bond goes there because this guy named Strangways was investigating this man, Doctor No, and this is the book. He gets killed, and so Bond is sent in to find out why was this man shot to death. Okay, and so they end up. So Bond ends up going to this island, and he just finds out that this guy is sort of a recluse. He stole a lot of money from some underworld types, and he essentially, people that make it a certain distance on his island, he thinks of as like worthy of being played with, I guess, toyed with, and so he ends up putting them through this maze And Bond is like going through the maze. In fact, that part actually made it into the movie. It's not as long as it is in the book, but that part actually made it into the film. Um, and we'll get into that more when we actually talk about Doctor No. But essentially, like Doctor No ends up like he's basically like skimming the island for bat guano. Okay, and like essentially Bond gets into a little thing, little lifter, and sees Doctor No, puts it over his head, release. I was like, I remember I'm reading through the book, and I remember getting done, and I'm going, now that's the way a villain should die. And I can't remember if I was with my dad or with my mom, and they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, Bond just killed the main villain with a load of guano. Just he got killed by a ton of shit. Where else can you say that in a book? I mean, honestly, that is like one of the best ways for a villain to die. I mean, it would absolutely suck, really. I mean, if you think about it, you're just getting crushed by a ton of guano. But I mean, hey, he deserves it for putting Bond through all that stuff. Um, and so that was kind of the reason why they did that. And so essentially, they flew out to Jamaica, which is where Ian Fleming was living when he was writing these books. He had a plantation there called GoldenEye, and they flew out there. Saltzman and Broccoli did, and they said, "Hey, we want to adapt, Doctor No into a book, into a movie, the book into a movie, and so we just want your blessing. We want to make sure that we get everything done the way that it's supposed to be done." He said, "That'd be fine." They said, "Who would you like to see as James Bond?" And he said, David Niven, Cary Grant, or Humphrey Bogart. And so the producers, they contacted Cary Grant. Cary Grant said, no. He's English. I'm not English. I'm American. There's no way it's going to work. There's no way it's going to work. I just know it's just never going to work for me. And so they talked to David Niven. Of course, David Niven was in the production of the Climax series, which I think at the time didn't come out until like 1967, but he had already kind of been tapped to do that, so he said no. And they contacted Humphrey Bogart, and again, Humphrey Bogart at that point was super old, and he was not, or he was getting older, and he was like, I'm not going to be able to do the action sequences. I'm not going to be able to do any of that stuff, guys. Like, seriously, there's no way. So, thus began the worldwide search for a man to play this, and they looked all over. Yeah, and Dana Broccoli, Albert R. Broccoli's wife, spotted Sean Connery, and the casting ensured the film was to be a success. Just how much of a success, nobody, perhaps not even Cubby Broccoli, could have predicted. And it was interesting because when we get to after You Only Live Twice, they actually had contacted Sir Roger Moore, to play James Bond. But he was in production of a TV show at the time called The Saint, which was kind of like Remington Steele. It was kind of like, some of these other, Mission Impossible type shows where it was a spy who was going around doing spy stuff and, and causing havoc and stuff, which is one of the reasons why they contacted him. They were like, hey, you're already playing a spy. We'd like you to play this spy. And he said, I can't. I'm deep in this contract right now. I can't get out of it. And similar to what happened with Pierce Brosnan, which we'll get to in a minute, the show was canceled. But at that time, they had already chosen George Lazenby to play in on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Then they brought Connery back for Diamonds Are Forever, and after that, that's when they approached Roger Moore again. And this time he said, I can do it! I'm going to do it! I absolutely want to play this character. And they said, great. And so they signed him up, and then he played it for 7. And we'll get into those when we get into those. But that was kind of, some of the weird casting decisions. Because, ironically enough, in 1987, Pierce Brosnan was picked to play James Bond. Because he was playing Remington Steele in American television. And he said, I'm playing Remington Steele. I can't do it. I have this contract over here, and I can't go play Bond. And they said, okay. So they went with Timothy Dalton, and guess what happened? Just like with The Saint, Remington Steele was canceled after like a season and a half or something. And so he was like, Dad, burn it. And so later on, when I think it was like 92, I think, 1991 or 92, they were looking for a new Bond because License to Kill hadn't done that well at the box office. And so they were looking to kind of have a new actor play Bond. Because they were trying to get another thing done. Then you had the fall of the Iron Curtain. You had some other things happen. So they kind of went on this like weird kind of like, how are we going to make this work? And they ended up choosing Pierce Brosnan instead of Timothy Dalton. They kind of cut Timothy Dalton loose from his contract, and then they picked up Pierce Brosnan, and he was cast as Bond for GoldenEye. Funnily enough, funny little backstory, because every time, the new actor has to say the inevitable line, Bond, James Bond, And so there was like, he was standing there, Famke Janssen was standing right in front of him, because she's just barely in frame. And they have the camera on him, and like there's like the whole crew and like some of the other cast members were all standing behind him, all standing behind the camera, watching Pierce Brosnan as he's standing there, and he goes, Bond, James Bond. And then the whole place was like, yeah! After Martin Campbell said cut, the whole place erupted, and everybody was yelling and screaming, and it was pretty funny. It's funny to hear Pierce Brosnan tell that story. I will also be getting into a few of the video games, because I do have some of the video games. Most notably, the ones that I'm going to be getting into. I think you can probably, if you've been around the fandom long enough, you know a couple of them that we're going to talk about, which will be 007 Bloodstone and 007 Everything or Nothing. We will probably also talk about this bad boy, From Russia with Love. These are really good games. If you haven't played them, I would suggest playing them. I will probably also kind of talk a little bit about some of the other video games that were made around the time of this stuff. I will probably mention some of the merchandise that was made. I'll probably mention some of the different things that are going on. But I kind of wanted to bring in... There's a reason why I wanted to talk about these, because like this one connects to one of the other Bond films in the series. Okay? And it's easy enough to miss if you haven't seen all of the stories. Okay? If you haven't watched all the films, you'll probably miss the reference in this game. Okay? And then this one, there's a few fan theories going out there, and I have my own fan theory on what this is. And if you've never played this game, it is awesome. The graphics are tremendous. I know it's for the 360. My 360s don't work anymore. The disc trays don't open up. So it kind of sucks, because I really love 007 Bloodstone. It is one of the best Bond games ever made. The driving, it was done by Bizarre Creations. The driving is built on Activision. What was the Activision series? It wasn't Need for Speed. It was... there was another racing series out there that they based this on. But the driving controls are very slippery in this game. So if you haven't... So if you played, like, say, Grand Theft Auto 5 and you know how to drive those cars very well, this game will be fun. If you're like me and you've played the Saints Row series and you love the tight driving controls, or you've played Need for Speed or Burnout uh, with tight driving controls, this game is slippery as hell and it sucks. And there's a part of it that you probably know that I'm talking about. Um, but anyway, so we will be talking about those, and I might mention some of the other games that were made in the series. Like I said, I will probably mention some of the other ones like Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, Quantum of Solace, GoldenEye, 007 Legends. I might even mention GoldenEye Rogue Agent just because it's just one of those oddities in the series where they tried to do a side-along story and then tried to make some of the more memorable villains from the series, including our old friend Dr. No, as one of the main antagonists. And they are actually protagonists, and some of them turn out to be antagonists. It's kind of interesting. So, yeah, and they actually brought Christopher Lee back to voice Scaramanga in the video game. 007, or not 007, but GoldenEye Rogue Agent. They actually brought Christopher Lee back to play in that. And this is one of the reasons why. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if you've ever played Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, I love this game. I know people hate it, but I love it. I thought this game was the best. In fact, this is what Final Fantasy X should have been. It had excellent voice acting. It had really good things. They brought back Ian McKellen to play Gandalf to record all new lines for it, and then they recut some of the footage from all the different scenes into what they called epic scenes. So you got to do a whole bunch of different things. It was really neat. I have this book. It is called The Rough Guide to James Bond. This is a book by Penguin Publishing, Penguin Group. It was $10 here in America. This came out back in like 2002 or 2003. Let me see here. 2002. Because it actually covered it actually covered very briefly, or no, oh no, I don't think it did. No, it didn't. It only covered The World Is Not Enough. It didn't have Die Another Day. Die Another Day was coming out when this came out. And so, yeah. And there's a little section in here called They Could Have Been James Bond. And I will kind of talk about some of that stuff. Now, one of the things I will mention that a lot of people have been clamoring for, and this has happened twice so far, and let's hope they stay away from it. Let's hope the people will hold the line. There have been various iterations of Bond. They've all been played by people who look like me. Because Bond is what's known as a WASP, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay, that's what people from Britain are known as, that are Caucasian, fair-skinned. They're known as WASPs. Okay, Bond has always been a WASP because he was written by a WASP. Ian Fleming was a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay, so there's been a call for, well, specifically two actors. One happened during Pierce Brosnan's casting. They actually had contacted the English actor Colin Salmon, who played Robinson in the films. He played one in Resident Evil series. He's been in a few other movies since then. A very, very famous British actor. Okay, he's an Anglo-African. Okay, let's put it that way. He has dark skin. Okay, and he said to the producers, because they asked him, they said, "Hey, would you want to play Bond?" And he said, "No." And they said, "Why not?" And he said, "Because Bond's a white man. Always has been a white man, always will be a white man. So you cast a white man as Bond. I'll play any other role you want me to, but I'm just not going to be Bond." Idris Elba's the same way. He was almost cast in Casino Royale, and he said the same thing. After Casino Royale, his star rose. Like he's been in Thor, he's been in the Fast and the Furious franchise. He was in Hobbs and Shaw. He's been in a lot of other movies. Um, Well known, widely regarded, highly regarded actor. And they asked him again, would you like to play Bond? And he said no. Bond has always been a white guy. He will always be a white guy. So you cast a white man in that role. People will know when I did my review of No Time to Die right here on this channel, I mentioned that there was a new 007 by the name of Nomi, played by Lashana Lynch. And I said that was fine because she wasn't Jane Bond. Okay, her name was Nomi. She was a completely different character. She was not trying to be James Bond. Okay, she was just another 00 that just happened to be assigned the 007 number when 007 retired. Okay, when James Bond retired. Okay, and I'm totally okay with that. I wouldn't even have cared if they had come out with a new sequel starring Lashana Lynch, okay, as Nomi so-and-so, and, you know, and they had, or made it like a spin-off movie, you know, featuring her as a 007 running around, you know, saving the world. I wouldn't have cared, okay, because she's not James Bond, or in this case, Jane Bond, which is what some people were trying to think that they were going to do. And I hope they don't, because Dad Burnett, Bond is a man, and he is white. And I'm sorry to say this, and I know that a lot of people are probably going to come to this video, and they're going to hear that, and they're going to say, you're so bigoted. No, I'm not. Okay? It would be like if they had cast Harry Potter, okay, as a, like, Asian girl. You'd have been like, wait, what? And then called her Harriet Potter. You'd have been like, what? No, the character's Harry Potter, and the covers specifically show him as a white boy with glasses. What the hell is this? Okay, you have to make the characters as they appear in the medium. Okay? You cannot change that, because that's what the fans expect. That's what the people expect when they go see the movie, is they're not expecting a complete gender and race swap. You can do that. Like M, right? Okay? They've had, like, comic books where M has been a black man. Totally fine. I don't care about that. M's been played by a woman, Judi Dench. She played M from GoldenEye all the way through Skyfall. Okay? And I loved it. I thought she was a great M. She did really good. Okay? Felix Leiter was played by many different characters over the years, mostly white men, but then in the Daniel Craig series, he was played by Jeffrey Wright, who's a black man. Great. Awesome. Jeffrey Wright is an awesome actor. And I'm glad he got the opportunity to be in the Bond series. Okay? And the sign-off that they gave his character in No Time to Die was amazing. Okay? I'm glad with what they did with that character. Okay? I don't care. And they've had many different Bond girls in the franchise. They have had, you know, they have had Asians, they have had black women, they have had white women, they have had European women, Italians, they've had French, they've had a whole bunch of different people. Okay? Hell, they even had a Canadian. Stana Katic was in Quantum of Solace in a very, very brief role right before she got cast as Beckett in Castle. Okay? So, there you go. Okay? There have been different things, and you can change up a lot of the different people. Okay? I wouldn't even matter if Q was a woman. Okay? I wouldn't care. It wouldn't affect it much. Okay? Because yes, the original Q in the books was written as a man, but Q had a lot of different assistants all down through the books. Like the original Ian Fleming novels, Q was just a man. But in the John Gardner novels, he was assisted by a by a woman known as Anne Riley, also known as Cute. Yes, Q apostrophe UTE, because she was attractive, so hence the name Cute. That was what the double O's monikers had given her. Now, we have also seen in various scenes in the Bond franchise, especially when they bring all of the double O's together, we have seen female double O's in those sequences. We've also seen double O's of different races as well. Okay? So it's not like it's not like the whole entire double O section was just made up of white men and that's it. So you can't say that. It's this one character is written that way. You can change anyone around him but him. And it would have been the same way. If they had made Hermione a black girl, nobody would have cared. They might have said, well, she had brown hair, so doesn't that make her like Caucasian or maybe like European somehow? But honestly, I don't think anybody would have cared. Ron, same thing. They could have made him black or Asian or something, and nobody would have cared. Okay? Same thing with Cedric Diggory. They could have made Cedric Diggory any other type of thing that they wanted, okay? But you cannot change what is an immutable characteristic of the character itself that was created by the author. Okay? Because then you're changing what the author's original vision was. And that's going to destroy what the people have in their heads when they read the books or when they watch the films. Okay? And that's what we're talking about here. Okay? It's not that you can't have a different person. But if you're going to do that, then make it a completely different character. Make it a completely different movie. Okay? But you can't call him James Bond because that's not who Ian Fleming wrote as a character. Okay? And I want people to understand that. Because I mentioned that in my review of No Time to Die. I said, there's talk of them. And then there was talk of them right after No Time to Die came out because of Lashana Lynch. Okay, there was talk about how we're going to see Jane Bond, and Bond's gonna be an African American woman, and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, folks, don't do that. Don't do that, please. Keep the character. Okay. I don't care if the next M is any other race on the planet. I think he could be Russian for all I care. I don't give a rip, okay? But you cannot change who James Bond is. He's a wasp. He's always been a wasp. He's been a wasp for 60 plus years now. And you can't change that. I'm sorry. You see that face? That's the face of James Bond. That's who people want to see when they go to the cinema. Okay? And that's who they have to pick. People can complain all they want, okay? But those are not the people that are going to be sitting in the seats watching the film. The people that are going to be sitting in the seats watching the film are going to be people like me who love and adore James Bond and have always and ever seen him as a white man. And if I go there and I see him as some Asian man or black woman or something like, I'm going to go, this isn't James Bond, folks. This is somebody's fever dream. This is somebody's fan fiction. This is not what Ian Fleming created. Okay? So please, let's just drop that right now. Okay? And again, that's not being elitist. It's not being racist. It's not doing anything. It is just being realistic. This is what the fans want. Not some Tumblr fanfic fever dream of somebody who thinks they can, change the character because reasons. Okay? It's not how it works. I think I've done the intro here. So smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think of this retrospective so far. When we come back, we are going to be doing the first 5 films. And that will be, or first 4, sorry. No, the first 4 films. We're going to be doing Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and Thunderball. So stay tuned for that. That will be coming pretty soon. And then we're just going to kind of systematically work our way through the James Bond franchise from Dr. No to No Time to Die. And yes, we will be getting to that one film that Kevin McClory made, because Kevin McClory was a bit of a weirdo when he decided he wanted to go and make his own. So, we will be discussing the return of Sean Connery in Never Say Never Again, but that will be for another time in another video. And we will talk about that when we get to Thunderball. Okay, we will talk about that whole thing. We will talk about the whole lawsuit. We will talk about all of that stuff and how it shakes out. And it will be, as we continue on, that will be coming back to the surface. And yes, when we get to For Your Eyes Only, we will be discussing the Never Say Never Again. Okay, so stay tuned for that. And as we say, we will see you on the next one.